Sup guys, it's Tealus here. Welcome back to the Fellhammer as we look at the second part of the two-part video series looking at Vengeance Demon Hunters. Demon Hunters in general only have 2 different specs, so we're only here for 4 videos as opposed to 6 for all the others and 8 for Druids. So a little bit different here, so you're only going to see this place so many times. In this video we're going to be looking at the talents that are available to a Vengeance Demon Hunter. In the first video we looked at all of the abilities that are coming for this brand new class, brand new spec in World of Warcraft Legion. We also looked at the artifact weapon coming for this brand new class and spec in Legion. So in this video we'll be looking at the talents. Now just a warning before we go any further. As I go through these talents, I will be constantly referring back to the spell book. In most other PvP and PvE talent videos, I don't refer back to the abilities because I assume that you generally know them, as these are not new classes for the most part. But with Vengeance Demon Hunters and Havoc Demon Hunters, the completely brand new classes, and so people may not understand the abilities still quite as well. Even watching through the first video, they may have already forgotten them. It's not ingrained to our brain like several of the abilities that we know across the game. You have not played against these in PvP constantly, so you haven't really kind of registered down what their abilities are and what they do. So I will be referring back to the spell book a lot. With that being said, let's go ahead and pull up the talent tree. We'll start with PvE first, and then we'll move into PvP. I'm going to bring up the spell book as well, so that we can see everything. So, let's go ahead and start with the 99 tier. In case you don't know, Demon Hunters start out at level 98, and they build up from there. I really don't like the idea that it's going to take all the way through the expansion for you to get up to level 110 and get all of your talents. All the other classes will have all of their talents locked in at level 100, but Demon Hunters are going to have to work their way up. I know they really couldn't just give you all your talents like straight at level 100, but I kind of wish there was, you know, maybe they had thought of doing Demon Hunters at maybe level 88 as opposed to level 98. That's more in line with how Death Knights were. If you remember when Death Knights were released, they came out at level 55, and by the time you were out of the zone, you were pretty much you were able to go straight into Burning Crusade and start working through Burning Crusade content. I kind of wish they had done that, especially since they're allowing people to kind of get access to this early. But instead they chose 98, and so you're not going to have all of your talents in time. So you start at 99 and work your way all the way up to 110 instead of it being like 89 and working your way up to 100. So, with that being said, let's look at the first ability here, which is called Abyssal Strike. Infernal Strike's range is increased by 10 yards and its cooldown reduced by 5 seconds. So if you forgot what Infernal Strike is, that is your gap closer for a Vengeance Demon Hunter. It allows you to jump in there. That is your gap closer. So it increases its range by 10 yards, so it gives it a full 40-yard range, which is in line with the new Warrior Charge. And its cooldown is reduced by 5 seconds, so you have a 15-second recharge with double charges on it. So you have like a 7.5 second basically gap closer with Infernal Strike. The only thing I'm worried about is that since it's targetable, Warriors know this very well. Heroic Leap has a lot of targeting issues, going up hills, etc. I'm afraid of that same being another big problem with Vengeance Demon Hunters. Hopefully it is not, but it is something that could be a problem, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully Blizzard is kind of let off the reins in terms of restrictions on where you can land and so forth. Let's just try right here. So I was able to jump up there on top of this thing, so maybe they have kind of relinquished the restrictions, but the thing that I'm worried about is right there is the pathing, which is what I'm most worried about in terms of this. So that I was able to jump on a ledge there, so hopefully that means that things are a little bit different here in Legion. Second option here is Agonizing Flames. Immolation Aura increases your movement speed by 30% and deals 50% increased damage. Immolation is going to do a lot of damage, so I can see this being popular. As you can see there, I was able to move pretty quickly, and I still have the aura going around me, so that's pretty cool. And then the last one here is Razor Spikes. While Demon Spikes is active, you deal 20% increased physical damage, and your melee attacks snare the target by 50% for 6 seconds. So one thing of note for Vengeance Demon Hunters is they really don't have a snare, a really good snare to use. They have a lot of mobility, just like their Havoc counterparts, but they don't have a very good snare. This could be the snare. I mentioned in the last video that Razor Spikes can pretty much be brought up 100% of the time. So you can pretty much have an auto attack snare 100% of the time. We'll see if that goes through. I'm not sure if it will be or not, but it seems pretty powerful. And if that's the case, this is easily going to be the choice for all PvPers. Whereas PvEers, PvPers could take Abyssal Strike. But otherwise, PvEers, I don't think will be taking Abyssal Strike. It'll be up to the theory crafters as to whether the increased damage on this, which you can pretty much have up 100% of the time, the increased damage on this is better, or the increased damage on this is better. So it'll be up to them to decide which one is better for Vengeance. I'm sure they won't be too thrilled about it, because who wants to theory craft about the damage of a tank? But it will probably become essential, you know, on time-gated or bosses that have a timer before Enrage, and you want to get as much damage as possible out. In the level 100 tier, we have Feast of Souls. Soul Cleave heals you for an additional 74,000 over 6 seconds. So if you remember, Soul Cleave is your second ability, it's your second main ability as a Vengeance Demon Hunter that consumes all the little souls around you and then heals depending on, you know, how much you have there. So you have 30 to 60 pain, and it will heal yourself depending on how much you have there. So it heals there, but this gives it an additional healing over time effect. And it says your Feast of Souls have healed for 0 shadow, 29,000 over healed. So you can get extra healing out of Soul Cleave if you get Feast of Souls. Second option here is Fallout. Immolation Aura's initial burst has a chance to shatter lesser soul fragments from enemies. So let's go ahead and use this here and see if we can see any soul fragments. Oh, that's amazing. And an AoE boss like that, I got 5 to pop out right there. So this could be a good way, like in an AoE fight, this will probably be the option in PvE, because it gives you a lot of ability to restore health when you're taking some AoE damage. It could be that Vengeance Demon Hunters are more AoE oriented tanks as well. I mentioned in the Guardian Druid video, and I didn't mention this in the first video, I've already mentioned basically about how each tank has its own little kind of niche, however you pronounce it, and they basically, you know, bears having a lot of health pool. With Vengeance Demon Hunters, it's all about restoring your health through souls and getting that parry rating through the spikes and so forth, self-buffing to reduce damage. So the other thing that is also unique about different tanks in World of Warcraft Legion, it comes from the fact that I think they are trying to make it so that some tanks will be better at more AoE type of tanking, and then more will be better at single target tanking. Now that already does exist in the game, but I think they're going to try and, you know, expand on that, and then give you more options so that you can focus your tank into certain directions. I want to be more of an AoE tank, I'm going for this. I want to be more of a single target tank, I'm going for these talents type of thing. So that already is in the game somewhat, but they are trying to do that with both tanks and healers to say, okay, you're going to have some AoE options here, you're going to have some single target options here. It depends on what your guild or your team needs in a raid setting, which is pretty cool. With that, we have the third option, which is Burning Alive. Every 2 seconds, your fiery brand deals 26,000 fire damage and spreads from the primary target to a nearby enemy. So, fiery brand. This is the brand that you put on a target that reduces their damage they deal by 40% to you. It lasts for 10 seconds with the buff from the artifact tree. So, 5 times it will link. This is something I easily see being taken for maybe a tank that is... I'm not quite sure actually where this will be tanked, because if it's a boss in which you've got like 3 different parts to a boss, you're gonna have different off tanks, you know, dealing with the other bosses. But if you run into a situation where you're gonna have a lot of AoE, you may want this. It deals some extra damage, great, but really the fact that is you want more people with your fiery brand having that 40% reduction. Though it will also kind of go into account of how well that plays into something like Fallout. Uh, I would expect Fallout to be seen in a situation where there's a lot of AoE, but they're not very strong AoE mobs. This is something, Burning Alive is something where you've got a lot of strong, heavy-hitting AoE mobs, but you know, it's not as much AoE. So I guess you could say a good example here would be if I've got like 20 imps attacking me, I would want something like Fallout in addition to the raid boss. Whereas Burning Alive, I would want something more like I'm tanking the raid boss, but then he's also dropped 4 infernals down. Then you want something like Burning Alive. So you have that option there. And then on top of that, for more single target, you can do Feast of Souls. You got a lot of options here. And then PvE, PvP, I have no clue which one will be taken, but you have a lot of options here in which you would like to take. In the 102 tier, we have, we'll get to Fellblade because it's an actual active ability last. We'll look at Flame Crash. Infernal Strike creates a sigil of flame when you land. Now, if you've forgotten what sigil of flame is, it's basically the flame that you put on the ground, activates after 2 seconds, and then deals fire damage. This basically will allow you to, I should have switched before I did that, there we go. This will allow it to actually put one on the ground when you land. So there's a sigil, explode, deals more damage. So you could say it's kind of an AoE threat option that you can use in PvP. It may be some extra damage you can do. It's up to you. Let's take a look at the other talents before we go ahead and start making decisions here. We have Gluttony, which is a passive. Consuming a soul fragment increases the damage of your next soul cleave by 10%, stacking up to 5 times. I'm not a big fan of this one because I can see this being used in PvP, but in PvE, you basically, in my opinion, are going to be wanting to use your soul cleave when you really need some health back, relief off your healer, etc. That's when I see soul cleave being used. So it'll also be used obviously when you reach maximum pain, because it's really the only thing that really takes pain to use, with the exception of Demon Spikes, which only costs 5 pain. So I mean, Demon Spikes costs nothing for you to retain your pain. So this is really the main pain consumption, is soul cleave. So when you reach top and pain, you of course will use it, but I would consider people more being kind of concerned about using it at a specific time in which it really is nice, as opposed to wanting to use it for damage buffs. This could be something used in PvP, but I don't see really PvE using it as much. The last option here is Fellblade, which you charge to your target and deal 120,000 fire damage. Sheer has a chance to reset the cooldown on Fellblade. It's a 14-second cooldown. I like this because it basically gives you another charge. I believe Havoc also has access to this, but basically you jump in, and then there you go. And then Sheer has a chance to reset it. So I'm going to try and use Sheer as much as possible and see if I can get it to reset. Doesn't look like that's going to happen before it's already up again. But it's an AoE, and this is probably something that I see PvPers using, because it gives you more sticking power. However, it also generates 14 pain. Your pain generation isn't the greatest. You have Immolation Aura, which is 20 pain over 6 seconds for a 14-second cooldown, and then you have Sheer, which is just 7 pain every strike. This is 14 pain, but it's also on a 14-second cooldown. So it gives you some more pain generation. It depends on how pain-starved you feel. This may be something that you want. Otherwise, the other options may be more useful in terms of AoE damage with Flame Crash, or AoE instantaneous threat with Flame Crash, and then just straight single target damage with Gluttony. In the 104 tier, I combined 4 and tier in the same word there. We have Feed the Demon. Consuming the soul fragment reduces the remaining cooldown of Demon Spikes by 1 second. Demon Spikes already has a ridiculously low cooldown for the uptime it has, so why? There's no way anyone would take this, in my opinion. there's no reason to take Feed the Demon, period, the end. Um, Unless, I could be wrong about this, but let's check this here. It does not increase. It's I was checking to see if it actually increased it from 20% to 40%. Let me go ahead and test this again when it actually reaches max level. We will test it again and see if it actually does. But if it doesn't stack, then there's no reason for it to, like, why would you even take this? You just need 100% uptime on this, which is all you need. So I see no reason for it to be taken. I could be wrong, but let me go ahead and build up some pain here, and then I will go ahead and use it twice in a row. And no, it's just the 30% extra from the artifact weapon, and then that's it. So there's no reason to take Feed the Demon. I see no reason why it should be there. The option on the right hand side is Soul Rending. Gain 50% leech while Metamorphosis is active, so that turns Metamorphosis into an even bigger cooldown. I guess you could say a defensive cooldown, because it increases your current and maximum health by 45% and generates 7 pain every 1 second for 15 seconds. So this will give you even more healing when that happens. Big defensive cooldown, so it makes it even stronger. Last option is Fracture. Brutally slam your target for 180,000 physical damage and shatter 2 lesser soul fragments from this. So this gives you more it gives you something to actually spend your pain on, for one. And then it gives you more ways to actually it gives you another way to use your pain, and then it gives you another way to actually shatter off more of these soul fragments. So let's go ahead and use this here. I believe I already have this down here somewhere. Yes, here's Fracture. So let's go ahead and use this right here. I'm going to wait for immolation to stop ticking. And then we're going to go ahead and use it right here. And you see it's just a quick dash, and there you go. Pretty simple as that. So I'm going to consume all these souls right there and get all the healing out of it. So I don't know how popular this will be. 40 pain is a lot, and I have a feeling that people will want to stick to using Soul Cleave for their pain. However, if it ends up that you're just able to generate a lot of pain consistently, then this may be something that people take. In the 106 tier, we have concentrated sigils. All sigils are now targeted at your location, and the duration of their effects is increased by 2 seconds. So this basically means that it now happens exactly where I land, and at the same time, it now lasts for 2 seconds longer. So their effects, normally this would last for only 6 seconds, now it lasts for 8 seconds. This one is increased to 8 seconds instead of 6 seconds for the damage over time. 8 seconds silence, and then lastly a 32-second fear. I'm guessing in PvP that would also increase the PvP length of it, probably from, I'm not sure what the PvP length of it would be, either 6 seconds or 8 seconds. That would increase it to either 8 or 10, most likely. So, but it now pops right underneath you, and as you know, I was complaining about how I didn't like how sigils, there were so many ground targeted abilities. As a Vengeance Demon Hunter, this would get rid of a lot of them. On the right hand side, we have another ability dealing with your sigil, is all sigils activate 1 second faster, and their cooldowns are reduced by 20%. So this brings the 2-minute cooldown to 1.6 minutes. It brings the 1-minute cooldowns of Silence and Misery down to 48 seconds, and then it brings the Sigil of Flame down to 24 seconds. So that is actually a pretty cool, this is a pretty cool talent to have here. Allows your sigils to be up more. However, they're back to being ground targeted, which you may or may not like. It depends on your play style. But it does activate quicker, so as you launch it right there, it immediately explodes pretty quickly, so they become easier to aim and attack. So this may be a PvP option, to be able to launch these off quicker. Who knows? Maybe if you don't like the ground targeting, you may go with concentrated sigils. The last option here is Fell Eruption. Impales the target for 240,000 chaos damage and stuns them for 2 seconds. Inflicts an additional 100% damage against targets permanently immune to stuns. I'm not sure how this will actually work in PvP. Sorry, in PvE. In terms of its damage. This may be a popular item just because it does a lot of damage. But it's only 10 pain. 10 pain is not hard to get at all. So I can see PvPers taking this easily as its option because stuns are super powerful in Legion. So I'm going to go ahead and use this here. Right there, you can see it little, kind of like chops up little fell, I don't even know what it is, little fell spikes out of the ground, hits them, stuns them, and does a ton of damage. 35-second cooldown. For the most part, from what I've heard, this is the option people are choosing, though if you aren't happy with how sigils are functioning, as a Vengeance Demon Hunter, you could choose to go with either one of them instead. So, with that, let's move to the 108 tier, which we have Blade Turning. Parrying an attack increases the pain generation of your next shear by 50%. So I can't really show this off because I'm not parrying anything, and I'm not going to go tango with the tanking dummies because I don't even think it would work, and I'm always afraid of dying from those tanking dummies. But basically this would allow it to generate 14 by 50%, sorry. So it probably would be my guess is it probably they would round it down, it would be generates 10 pain instead of 7 pain. It's kind of lame, but it's extra generation. That's if you're struggling with pain generation. I'm not sure how difficult pain generation will be in PvE, so it'll be an option, but I'm not quite sure how popular it will be. We have Spirit Bomb. Launch a nearby soul fragment at your target, dealing 20,000 shadow damage to all nearby enemies and afflicting them with frailty for 15 seconds. You'll heal for 5% of all damage you deal to enemies with frailty. So, we'll go ahead and launch, oh, I need a nearby soul fragment, so let's go ahead and build up the soul fragments here the best I can. There we go, launch them all out, and then I'm going to launch them in with this ability, and oh, I can launch them one at a time. Okay, so that's really cool. So now they all have frailty, and I'm able to get healing off of them, in addition to my Spirit Cleave healing. So that's actually pretty cool. So that is Spirit Bomb right there, and what you're available to do. So once again, I'm going to show you. However, do take note that this takes away from your healing that you will get normally from these. I'm going to pull this away so you can actually see a little bit better the Spirit Bomb. There it is. It launches in. There it is. Oh, the other one's not close enough. There we go. Launches in and deals damage. So it's an option for PvP and PvE. I'm not really sure where this will be used. In PvE, I feel like you want to save your lesser soul fragments for actual healing instead of actually just launching them in. I mean, you will heal for 5% of all damage you deal to targets with frailty. It afflicts all nearby enemies, so maybe it'll be... That Demon Hunter just went off the edge. Sorry, you'll have to rewind the video and watch that. That was pretty funny. Spirit Bomb, maybe in an AoE fight, because you're targeting all these enemies, and then if you're able to do a lot of damage with Immolation, you could end up doing a lot of healing with Spirit Bomb. Otherwise, I don't see this being taken in any PvE single target fights, and in PvP, I'm not quite sure where this fits in. With that being said, the third option here is called Fell Devastation. Unleash the Fell within you, damaging enemies directly in front of you for 441,000 fire damage over 2 seconds. Causing damage also heals you. Causing damage also heals you for up to 802,000 health. So that's kind of strange, the wording of that. Causing damage also heals you for, I mean, you're gonna deal damage with this Fell Devastation. So I don't know why it says causing damage also heals you for... My guess is the tooltip's supposed to really read, unleash the Fell within you, damaging enemies directly in front of you for 441,000 fire damage for 2 seconds, and healing you for 802,000, up to 802 health, 1,000 health. That's my guess is what it should more be like. So we're gonna go ahead and grab this here, build it up real quick, so we can see what this does, how much damage it's able to do. And once the immolation ticks off, we will go ahead. It's got a 20-yard range, so we'll go ahead and use it. So this is very much like the Havoc Demon Hunter version of like I-Beam. You can get Fell Devastation, have your own version of I-Beam, I guess you could say. And that is what Fell Devastation is. A lot of damage, and you should get some healing out of it. It says Fell damage was hitting for a lot of damage. Looks like 50,000 per tick. And then it healed me for 94,000. So it does heal for a lot. It adds to your healing overall. So basically this tier is kind of underwhelming. The parry could allow you to get a lot of pain generation because you're always going to have spikes up. In case you have forgotten, your demon spikes are your damage mitigation that gives you parry chance and reduces physical damage taken by a certain amount, and you pretty much will be able to have it up almost full time. So with having parries, allow your shears to generate more pain. That'll give you a lot of pain generation. The other option here is Spirit Bomb, which consumes those soul fragments for frailty instead of consuming them for health. It depends on how often you have a lot of pain. Maybe you have a lot of pain and you're not using Soul Cleave as much. Remember, Soul Cleave is what consumes all the soul fragments and heals you based on that. So maybe you're not using Soul Cleave as much, and so Spirit Bomb can be useful in terms of just sustain heal. But overall, I'm not sure where Spirit Bomb will fit into things in terms of its actual healing potential. So, with that, let's move into the 110 tier. First is Last Resort. This is a passive. Sustaining fatal damage instead transforms you into Metamorphosis form and returns you to 30% health. This effect may occur only once every 3 minutes. So this is pretty strong, and it basically cancels out having to use a rebirth. PvEers, this may be the option for you, just because of how, you know, transforming you into Metamorphosis form is pretty strong. You know, you can game the system if you really need to and make it so that you get a big heal off when you actually need it, or I should say let the tank die. We know his last resort is up, and then you can heal them up from there. So it can be like you can game the system depending on the situation in the PvP match. The option over here is called Soul Barrier. Shield yourself for 8 seconds, absorbing 286,000 damage and consuming a soul fragment adds Shield yourself for 8 seconds, absorbing 286,000 damage. Consuming a soul fragment adds 47,000 damage to the shield. Soul Barrier's absorption cannot be reduced below 38,000, consumes all soul fragments within 20 yards. So this is another way for you to actually consume soul fragments. And I know there's a lot of people here, but I'm going to build up soul fragments right here, and then we're going to take a look at Soul Barrier and see just what it can do for us. So we have only one soul fragment here. I thought we would have had more by now. I will continue to use this, and we'll use Immolation Ore to get as much out as possible. There, we're up to 4 now, so I'm going to use this now. And it's going to consume everyone. I got this small barrier. It's this pinkish barrier around me, kind of hard to see. And that is the Soul Barrier. It only lasts for 8 seconds. So you can kind of game the system and be like, okay, I know big damage is coming. I'm going to use Soul Barrier. That could be an option that you choose. 20-second cooldown, only costs 30 pain. If you end up having a lot of pain generation and you find yourself not using Soul Cleave as much, you know, that could be an option. Maybe you're at 100 pain, you know, and you're able to use Soul Barrier to mitigate a lot of boss burst damage, and then on top of that, then you can use Soul Cleave afterwards to heal yourself up. There's a lot of options there. The last option is called Nether Bond. Bind yourself to a friendly pair for 15 seconds. Every 1 second, the health of you and your target is redistributed such that you are at the same percentage of maximum health. I'm going to try and use it on this player right here. I don't know if it's going to work. It doesn't look like it. So I have to be in a party with someone, so you can't just, you know, randomly go, you know, go mess with someone and like jump off a cliff or something and get yourself knocked down to like 5% health, and it'll be redistributed with them. They have to actually be in a party with you. But it will bind you to a player target, and then it will make sure that you guys are always at maximum health. So maybe if you're in a single target tank fight, Nether Bond can be something that you can bind to the, maybe like if your raid has a third tank, you can bind it to the third tank to keep the Vengeance Demon Hunter alive longer. That is something that is possible. It's just pretty cool. I think it's pretty interesting if you ask me. So, that's all the talents for a Vengeance Demon Hunter in terms of PvE. Let's go ahead and take a look at the honor talents for a PvP Vengeance Demon Hunter. PvP functions a little bit differently in World of Warcraft Legion. You'll start at level 1 and you'll work your way all the way up to level 50. At level 1 you'll get Gladiator's Medallion. By level 10 you'll have Sigil Mastery. Then at 13 you'll get Adaptation and you'll work your way down from there. And then the same thing will be repeated for the third tier all the way down to Illidan's Grasp, which will be given at level 46, and then at level 50 you can choose to prestige and get like a mount or a pet depending on the level, and start all over at 1 again and start with Gladiator's Medallion again and work your way all the way up again. It's up to you. You know, maybe you don't want to deal with leveling up all your talents again. Otherwise, you could be like, you just want to get all the cool vanity stuff and pets and mounts and so forth, and you may want to go for it. It's up to you. So, with that being said, the very first tier is dealing with an Honorable Medallion. The Honorable Medallion is a 3-minute trinket, basically. It's a 3-minute heirloom trinket, and you get it automatically from entering a BG. You can replace that with a 2-minute trinket, the one you're accustomed to, and that is the Gladiator's Medallion. Your second option is Adaptation. All loss control effects with a duration of 5 seconds or more will activate your Honorable Medallion spell, but only causes it to incur a 60-second cooldown. That basically is an option. It doesn't give you really much control over your actual over your trinket. You do have access to Honorable Medallion. However, the Honorable Medallion, I do believe, will cause Adaptation to go on a 3-minute cooldown. So do take note and be careful of that. Otherwise, the third option here is something that I really only see tanks taking, though the squishier tanks that rely on parry and dodges may not want to take this. It replaces your Honorable Medallion, and the duration of incoming crowd control effects is reduced by 25%. This is something that I can see bears taking real easily, but when it's something like maybe something like either a Brewmaster or even a Vengeance Demon Hunter here, where you kind of have to rely on some active mitigation to really reduce your damage, you got to be careful, and so that may be not the best option. It's up to you though. The second tier here is the tank tier. We have Relentless Assault. Being attacked increases your damage by 3%, lasts for 5 seconds, stacks up to 5 times. So if you're being attacked a lot, you're going to basically always have a 15% damage buff. There's Tormentor. Your Torment has a reduced range, but causes enemy player to be intimidated, increasing your damage taken by 20% for 6 seconds. Their damage taken by 20% for 6 seconds. Your melee attacks refresh the duration of the intimidated. This is just like Guardian Turrets. This is so powerful in PvP. I just don't see anyone else taking anything but this. You basically get to pick a target out and mark them for death, so to say, and everyone will be doing increased damage to them. Your taunt on an 8-second cooldown. This is just so strong. I really don't see many scenarios in which this is not being taken. The last option here is Softened Blows. Any non-periodic attack that deals damage less than 10% of your maximum health is reduced by 20%. So all the little stuff like Frost Bolts and Fireballs and Shadow Bolts, those will be mitigated by this pretty well. The big stuff like a Pyro Blast, a Greater Pyro Blast, Chaos Bolt, Sniper Shot, that's not going to be, like, this will not mitigate that damage. So just be warned, you're open to very big bursts, but at the same time you're able to be protected by a lot of non-periodic damage out there, small damage out there. You basically you get a 20% reduction on all of that. I see this being taken a lot maybe in uncoordinated PvP, but in coordinated PvP you can bet Tormentor is going to be the option without question. In this third tier, we have Solitude. Increases the damage by 15% and attack speed by 15% when there are no allies within 15 yards. I really, you know, as a team, you want to be near your team in PvP, and so I really don't like this. I didn't like this the first time I saw it, and I don't like it now still. Um, you should be with your team, not by yourself. Maybe if you're tank, Vengeance tank, holding the flag, trying to hold them off while your team's trying to get the flag back, maybe it could be used, or maybe you're holding a node by yourself as a tank. This could be useful, okay? That's the only time I see use out of this. So maybe on a node map like Battle of Gilneas, Arathi Basin, but other than that, I wouldn't expect this to be a popular option. There's Reign of Chaos. Infernal Strike has an additional 10-yard range and 1 additional cooldown charge. So it has 3 cooldown charges, and if you got that other talent, it would have a 50-yard range, which is makes it the best gap closer in the entire game. So if you've forgotten, that is your Infernal Strike. That's pretty cool. So I'm not quite sure how popular that will be, but that's a pretty great option, and that's probably my favorite in this tier. Cover of Darkness increases the chance for you and your allies to avoid damage while within your darkness effect by 50%. If you've forgotten what Darkness is, it is this 3-minute cooldown that cloaks you, getting a 15% chance to avoid damage for 8 seconds, 15% chance to avoid all damage. This basically increases increases the chance for you and your allies to avoid damage while within your darkness effect by 50%, so they'll bring it up to 30% chance for you to avoid damage while within that big purple puddle. In the 4th tier, we have Unending Hatred. Anytime you're a victim to magical effect, you gain 5 pain, so you're going to be gaining a lot of pain here, which means that you'll be able to do a lot of soul cleaving, which means that as long as you have a lot of soul fragments out, you'll be able to do a lot of healing. Reverse Magic dispels all harmful magical effects from yourself and all nearby allies within 10 yards and sends them back to their original caster. 1 minute cooldown, that's really strong. So if your team's grouped up and has a whole lot of dots on you, you have Seeds of Corruption everywhere, etc., all kinds of mage dot effects, Shadow Priest, you name it, Reverse Magic and send them all back to the casters is really strong. And definitely, I think, one of the better talents. We have Eye of Leotheras, if I pronounce that correctly. You keep a watchful eye over an enemy. Whenever they cast a harmful spell, they suffer 7% of the health in shadow damage and refresh the duration of Eye of Leotheras. Cast 6 seconds. So, this is pretty interesting. If you have a spellcaster that spams a lot of spells very quickly, like dot effects, etc., maybe a Moonkin running around doing Moonfire everywhere, this is going to be brutal, especially if you have that person that's just not paying attention, and he just sits in there and he runs in and he dots everything up, and all of a sudden he melts. He just 7% of his health just constantly being ticked away. So this could be really strong. It could be a fun one to play with different players. They're gonna be like, you know, how in the world do I have like no health? How did I die so quickly? Well, you were Moonfire spamming. So this can be a lot of fun. And I would say the more experienced players, they're not gonna fall for this. So it's basically gonna be up to Reverse Magic and Unending Hatred. In that case, probably Reverse Magic in the more high-rated brackets. In the 5th tier, we have Everlasting Hunt. Dealing damage increases your movement speed by 15% for 3 seconds. So basically, as long as you're dealing damage, you will always be able to have an increased movement speed by 15%. Remember, the Immolation Aura lasts for 6 seconds, and as long as you're near someone, you'll be dealing damage to them. So it is an option. You have Cleansed by the Flame. Immolation Aura dispels all magical effects on you when cast. I kind of like this. I really like Immolation Aura as an ability. So this will give you kind of even some more ability for Immolation Aura to be a strong, a potent, now kind of a way to dispel stuff as a way to deal damage. And then your last option here is Jagged Spikes. While Demon Spikes is active, which should be pretty much, as I've mentioned numerous times, pretty much 100% of the time, while Demon Spikes is active, melee attacks against you cause physical damage back to the attacker equal to 30% of the damage taken. Oh my gosh, I butchered that tooltip. While Demon Spikes is active, melee attacks against you cause physical damage equal to 30% of the damage taken back to the attacker. So you are reflecting 30% of the physical damage, basically. And since jagged spikes should pretty much always be up, there's really no reason for you not to have this, and you constantly have a 30% reflect on them, which is pretty strong. The last option, the last tier here, level 6 tier, we have Sigil Mastery. Reduces the cooldown of your sigils by an additional 40%. I'm starting to like this more and more. Because first off, you have that 20% reduction, which will bring it to 1.6 minutes, bring it to 24 seconds. It looks like 48 seconds and 48 seconds. I believe this adds on to this, so it's going to be almost another 50% reduction on top of that. So then this brings it down to like a 50-second cooldown. This would bring it, or it would be about a minute cooldown if I'm correct in thinking so. This would bring it down to more like 14 seconds. This would bring it down to 28 seconds or so. And having that mass, this mass AoE fear on like a 28-second cooldown is pretty strong. So I really do like this option. I think it's going to be kind of fun in PvP. You have Demonic Trample. You enter Metamorphosis, moving at 200% increased speed for 8 seconds, knocking down all enemies within your path, dealing 18,000 physical damage. During Demonic Trample, you cannot be affected by snares, but cannot cast... You are unaffected by snares, but cannot cast spells or use your normal attacks. So, this just turns you into a big bull, knocking everything down. It looks like a lot of fun, but I think its utility, its usage maybe won't be the best. I could be wrong. There may be some nice options for this in a rated setting, maybe in Capture the Flag or something, getting away with the flag, etc. It's only on a 30-second cooldown, so that's pretty cool. So there could be some really big uses in a Capture the Flag setting, but I think outside of that, I don't think you will see this very much. And I'm not sure how this would fit into an arena setting either, so... but definitely an interesting ability to have. The last option here is going to be Illidan's Grasp, 1.5 minute cooldown. You strangle the target with demonic magic, dangling them in place for 6 seconds. It sounds kind of like Strangulate. Use Illidan's Grasp again to toss the target to a location within 40 yards, stunning them and all nearby enemies within 3 seconds, dealing 21,000 shadow damage. That's awesome. And as cool as Demonic Trample is, this is way better in terms of PvP. Just think about it. You use Illidan's Grasp on the flag carrier, and you throw him into a hornet's nest of your team. I mean, if you're a Horde player, or in my case, I'm an Alliance player, basically I say, nah, you're not getting away. Illidan's Grasp, and I throw him into a hornet's nest of Alliance players, and then he has to escape from that. That's awesome. That's really cool, and it's going to be a lot of fun just chucking people across the map and being like, alright, you got to deal with all these guys here. I'm going to love using this on rogues that escape. Anybody who like tries to run away, has those, those track shoes on, their Nikes on, I'm going to be using this on them all the time. They've blown all their cooldowns, their vanishes, whatever. I'm going to be like, Illidan's Grasp, here, deal with it. And just kind of like laugh the entire way. So this one's a lot of fun, 1.5 minute cooldown. I really love this tier. I think this tier is awesome. The others are not as interesting as this one, but this one's really a lot of fun. And Vengeance Demon Hunters I think are actually going to be a lot of fun in PvP. Overall, Demon Hunters are going to be a lot of fun in PvP. The sigils are something that you're going to have to get used to in terms of the timing of them and everything, but they have a lot of potential, which is really cool. Otherwise, that is everything for Vengeance Demon Hunters coming in World of Warcraft Legion. I know these videos were long, but they're brand new spells, so we had to kind of go through and backtrack several times on, the abilities and what they, just reminding you what these abilities actually do. So there's a lot of options here, a lot of fun. I personally am liking Demon Hunter. The only thing that I'm worried about is that pretty much everyone's going to be a Demon Hunter when we get out there. So hopefully that won't be the case. I will say that I do think Demon Hunters have a higher skill floor than Death Knights did. So I think, as opposed to Wrath of the Lich King, when Death Knights came out and they were all over the place and they were like the top and everything, I think to be really good at a Demon Hunter, it's going to take a lot more work than it did with a Death Knight, and so you're going to see probably some less Demon Hunters because of that. So, with that, this is the last time you'll see the Fellhammer unless I decide to go to do a little class order hall overview of what is coming in Legion. Otherwise, this will be the last time from Fellhammer, and this is the last of the Demon Hunter specs. There's only 2, remember, there's not 3. So there's only 2 specs to deal with as a Demon Hunter. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope to see some Demon Hunters out there, not a whole ton of them. But otherwise, this is Tearless, and I will see you guys in the next video. Tearless out.